All right, all right. Good afternoon. Actually, good early evening and afternoon, everybody. You are checking out Philly Funk Radio on Facebook, and you are also checking us out live on the Power WVSR YouTube page. And I am here live this afternoon, and as you may or may not know, there have been demonstrations throughout the country surrounding the death of George Floyd, and Philadelphia is having our protests right now. I'm going to go to a little bit of a live shot right now of the protest, which has gone on to the bridge going from Pennsylvania into Delaware. I think this is on 95, on 95 South. So let's go to that real quick. And I just wanted to show you what's going on. You see the protesters standing there with the police. And you see the police, they have traffic blocked off on 95. By the way, if you are in the areas of either Center City, Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Art Museum, or if you're near any of the exits or off-ramps between I-76, I think it's I-76 East. Well, we'll just say East and West, as well as 95, going up to the state of Delaware, which is 95 South. You may want to avoid that area because right now there are demonstrations going on in those particular areas. So 95 and 76 are effectively blocked right now. I am going to go on our line right now. We have Mr. Van Stone, and for some reason, Van, your lighting is horrible. I cannot see you that well. Your lighting's very dark. All right, we're going to go to you anyway. So anyway, Van, how you doing today? Hold on for a second. Okay, let me see if I can hear you. How you doing?
I'm fine. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. All right, so I'm sure you see the video. I'm going to switch back real quick. I'm sure you see the video of the protest that's going on. And, you know, I'm sure you've seen some of the stuff from earlier. Fortunately, right now, everything is peaceful with everybody just peacefully demonstrating. And I'm hoping it stays that way. So I'm going to go to you. And I'm going to turn everything over to you and get your opinion about what's going on right now. Van, go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, welcome Philadelphia. I'm Van Stone, talk live here in Philadelphia from WBSR 1360. And it's 3:04 in the afternoon, and we are going to call this a special program. It's a little dark in here, and that's because I'm at home and the light from outside, it's bright. And, you know, it's bright outside, so just make it as light in here. But it's okay. You don't need to. You know, everybody knows what I look like. So here we are where there's protests underway, ongoing in cities across America. And we need to talk about several points just in case you have any questions. You can, you know, throw those questions out to us later on. So, of course, we know this is all about the death of George Floyd. And it's not just about the death of George Floyd, the protests are going on, but it's just the deaths of so many black Americans, and particularly black Americans, whether they're male or female. And that's very important for us to discuss, you know. So one of the things I wanted to get across is that the protest is the right thing to do. So for all the naysayers who have always saying, what does protest do? Protest doesn't never get us anywhere, you know, so what's the point? To me, in my opinion, people who always say those things, they're basically the people who don't have an interest to do anything in the first place. So we have so many people, whether they're black or white, that always find something to say that's really not encouraging. In this point, when you have a protest, this is what I want to say, and then Jerry, we got to go back and forth and have a discussion, because I really don't want it to be where I'm giving a lesson. I want it to be, we hear each other's opinions. You know, I'm a little long-winded, but this is like the perfect time for me to do that, but to help so that people can follow the show and pick up with us. It's always better to have a conversation, your view, my view, and we just go back and forth. And of course, I have explanation
Oh well, of course.
These,
I'll definitely give you my view. Go ahead.
oh, okay, but I just wanted to bring this out to the audience why we're here. Not only are we professional journalists, but we have special background as well. And if you're watching MSNBC or CNN, that's who they usually go to. They carry the news, and they have people who have background in law enforcement, people who have background in law, okay, and people who have background in community. So
By the way, before
because
you start, sorry, before we
yeah,
start, I just wanted to let you know too. I wanted to let anybody out there that's looking at this know. Throughout the program, we'll be taking live shots of the protest that's going on right now. We have to give credit where credit is due. We are getting this video footage courtesy of WTXF, Fox 29, and Fox Television Stations Group. This is in the interest of commentary under the Creative Commons license that allows for fair usage for parody and information purposes, and no copyright infringement is intended. And like I said, we're going to give credit where credit is due to the great people at Fox 29 and Sky Fox. Go ahead.
okay, so if, just in case you really don't know what's going on, because it's still possible people don't understand. The protest has actually started in Minneapolis. That's very, very important, very important. But it actually spread to just places and states, where people are just so fed up that they're just out there in numbers, in large numbers, so many numbers at this particular time that I'm going to bring out some facts to you. When you talk about protests, what's the difference? We have to go back in history at this point because of what's actually happened, where the people are enraged over the death of George Floyd, and that it is no joke, that it's real, and that it's legitimate. This is a valid complaint, and we want people to understand that when the protest happens, it is beyond the part of trying to say, well, let's be reasonable. Reasonable in the sense of talking to people with reason, thinking about things with reason, talking about the law with reason. So you had to see what had happened to him, to George Floyd, the way he was murdered. He was killed by the police in broad daylight. And when we first discussed this, the question was, what led to his death? I was really shocked that he was killed and he had handcuffs on him. He had handcuffs on him. So again, as I was trying to say, and we're going to go back and forth and talk about different points. I think when we talk about different points, then people will get to understand why this is so significant, why this is so important, and why the outrage is valid across the United States, and it's going to grow. Hopefully it'll be in every state, whether it's north or south, whether the states have a reputation for non-racism compared to the others. Racism, I'm going to expose some things that, the leadership, they still not exposing, but at this time, now, a lot of stuff is really coming out. And as crazy as 2020, we say now. But yep, come to find out there's so many different things that just have not been said. They do the same thing over and over. They talk about the law. They say all these things. They talk about the Constitution. But in reality, they're not really telling the people, we the people, what really is the law. What can they really do? And it's not even a situation of, well, let's try to talk it through. Let's try to be calm. Let's try to do this and so forth and so on. So, the way that George Floyd was murdered in broad daylight with witnesses and being filmed, and the police, more than one, 4 was on the scene, continued to do what they did, didn't matter who was watching, until the man died. The knee was on his throat. Finally now the news is really being spoken the correct way. That's why I was anxious to really do this part. I actually had to call Jay Wilson and say, listen, man, we got to do this. I know we're busy and we're out here doing other things, but there's a lot of stuff that they're just not saying. They're still not expressing it correctly because it's always to try to water down what these people did, these police officers. Why was it so bad? You know, the knee was not on his neck. If you say on the neck, then it doesn't sound as bad. But it definitely sounds like what it is when you see someone putting their knee on someone's throat. That's not even a police tactic. And then later on, the police in Minneapolis, they still try to come out and say, well, this is a tactic that we allow here. But that's not a tactic. There's no tactic anywhere in law enforcement where you get someone on the ground and you knee in their throat. That makes no sense, and especially when you have handcuffs. So, Jerry, let's get into it.
Well, basically what they're doing.
What's your part?
Well, what they're doing basically is what you learn in the military. Like a lot of people probably don't understand about these police officers. When they're trained like military. A lot of them are former military. So when these people go out there, the military trains you basically to be a killer. They don't train you to be a human. They don't train you to have compassion. They train you on how to defeat an enemy. And when you go into the police department, you know, they talk all that protect and serve crap. But from what I'm hearing, they basically teach you to kill, and they teach you that the general public is the enemy. So,
okay.
You know, this does not surprise me at all. You know, this keeps happening and keeps happening. Now, the new twist, and you were saying about how they're trying to mitigate what the police did, what the cop in this instance did. Now, the new thing is they came out and said, well, he didn't die of the police having their knee on his neck, but rather he died of pre-existing conditions, including heart disease and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And it's like, you know, so fortunately the family of George Floyd is asking for an independent investigation, and I'm hoping they get that because obviously, you know, the officials are going to cover up for the other officials. So, I mean, they're not going to automatically just say, oh, yeah, he killed him. They're not going to do that. So I'm hoping they get that independent autopsy, and I'm pretty sure that that some of the people, especially in the black community, you know, and the higher ups, the ones with power and the ones with money, will help them pay to do an independent autopsy as well.
Right. Okay. So here's why they're not going to get away with it. There's three parts of law enforcement. When you become a police officer, part number one is education. That's the most important part of being a police officer. You have to pass a test. You have to learn about law and what you are not supposed to do as a police officer. That's the whole thing in being a police officer. Protect and serve means these are the things you are not supposed to do. But what happens is that you have these people, whoever they are, whether they're black or white, let's get that straight. It can be a person who's just a mean and evil and angry individual will seek this job out just so they can abuse this authority. Okay? So we're not even going to talk about good cops. We already know that. We already know that's good cops. So this is not what even this is about, to just say today is not the day to say, well, there's good cops, there's good cops. We don't even want to bring that up because to be a cop, there's three parts of law enforcement that you must pass. So you must pass the education part, which is the written part, and you must take a test. Okay? The second part is psychological. You are evaluated. You have to take a psychological evaluation, and I'm sure, Jerry, even though you were never a police officer, you have experience in law enforcement as well. So when you do security, it's still law enforcement.
Well, and I know going to what you're saying, even doing the security that I was doing, to an extent, you still, they want to make sure that you are actually suitable mentally for doing that job. So even on that low level, whereas I was a guard one time at a movie theater, and the company still made sure, because they want to make sure that when there's a problem with a guest customer, whatever you call it, that you're not going to fly off the handle and you're not going to make that company liable. So, they do that for most security companies when you want to be a bail enforcement officer, and even getting a 235, you have to be mentally suitable.
Right. But that's so this is the point. So basically, to successfully become a police officer, you have to pass only 2 of the 3 requirements to become a police officer. Most people are not aware of that. And this is the problem that bothers me. When you have these people, they leave the police force, they were, police commissioners or police chiefs, they get popular in the public, okay, and then they land a job on television. And the workers, the commentators, they really don't know. The analysts who have the job, and so they look toward these professionals who've done this for 20 years or whatever, 30 years as a police commissioner, to just explain and tell. But they still don't tell, because you got to remember that when you join the police force, you are part of a organization, a sorority, and fraternity, and they have a code. They have a code, no snitching. That's what's crazy. So then you're gonna fraudly always say, when the police always say, we hear this nonsense, the snitching thing is keeping us from no snitching, from finding out what's going on. It's all fraudulent talk. The police are the worst ones when it comes, that's their code, no snitching. So even when things are supposed to happen, right away when you can get an answer, who's breaking the law, they know the law themselves. The police know. But they go right out and do everything that they're not supposed to do, and then from the top level, locally, the top level won't even say what they have done they're not supposed to do, and here's why. Okay? So they don't want you to know, because it's all about, them sticking together, them against us, even though they'll continue to say, no, it's not about that. But it is. Because if it wasn't, then why wouldn't you at the top police officer, why would you explain to the public basically what your officers are not supposed to be doing? That's what it's all about, of being a police officer. It's not about going out and having authority and telling other people what you're not supposed to do. Being a police officer is about what you are not supposed to be doing. But that gets thrown out the window. So if you pass the 2 parts, psychological and you're written, you can be a police officer. You don't even need a gun to be a police officer. That's the other part. This is why this is so terrible. Now people need to understand. I hope that people roll past this and hear Van Stone talking and say, yo, wow, we need to, learn a little more. Somebody needs to, reach out. They can Facebook us if they have any other questions and say, we didn't know that not only was Van Stone involved with media, and Jerry Wilson, his partner with these radio stations. These are 2 young black men. We're not considered old yet. We're not 65 yet. So when it comes to law enforcement, see, that's another key thing. When you be a law enforcement officer, they want you to come in at a very young age, and they limit you coming in. That's another thing. They cap, when you get this job, you can't be over such and such and such an age. But then once you get that job, you can stay a police officer until how long you want to. You can be 80, 85, 90. If you just feel like mentally you want to still be involved in law enforcement, then you can stay there. And that also makes sense as to what it means to be a police officer. That's why you don't really even need to have a gun to be a cop. But, you'll hear the mindset, you got to have a gun to be a cop. Because why? Because of the bad person. The bad person is always the nonsense. That is the nonsense where the process of being a cop, it goes against that whole process. Now, when I had my training, because I've done law enforcement, and I have a long background in law enforcement, and I was what's considered a private policeman. So if you get police behind any type of law enforcement, you have the same powers as your local police, but relative. And that's very important to understand. So, you still have limitations of what you can do, but being a police officer is a police officer, which means you have to follow all the things. There's no, once I become a local police officer that works for the city or the borough, then I can do more. You know, there's no such thing. The law is the law, which is set out for the cops, for all cops. So here we are, proving this point, you know, that you don't need a gun to kill anybody as a cop. That's what these things have been going on. The choking to death, several people, I can't breathe, and you just keep choking a person. You know that you do intend to kill this person. And, you know, that's a problem. Well, go ahead, Jerry. We're going to go back and forth.
Well, this is what I am glad of is that I'm getting an echo on your end for some strange reason.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me turn this down. All right. Well, if you can still hear me.
I hear you.
Oh, and I can still hear you. Okay. Well, the echo disappeared. Well, what I was going to say was at least I think I wanted to talk about the charging because, you know, the officer involved was actually charged. And a lot of people are saying that they should have pursued first-degree murder charges against the officer involved. And before I explain why the charge I think was appropriate, what do you think about the third-degree charge?
Oh, okay. Well, it's appropriate, but that's a good word, but it's not enough. So, okay, he was charged. You know, at least he was charged with something. That's the view. But it's not enough because of what he did. But you can go ahead, Jerry, and then I can you know, come back in.
I think that this is actually going to fortunately lead to a conviction. And the reason why I'm confident is, again, I think the charge was appropriate based on everything that has come out thus far. Now, you and I both know what that man did was murder. But charging what you think and what could be proven in a court of law is different. And the reason why I agree with the third-degree murder charge is for them to have pursued first-degree murder charges. First-degree murder would have to prove what's called specific intent. And it also would have to prove premeditation, meaning that for a first-degree murder charge to be sustained and lead to a conviction, the individual involved, in this case the officer, would have actually had to have a forethought and a plan to actually kill this man from the start. And proving that in the court of law would be difficult because they would have to show what steps were taken, to actually carry out the premeditated killing. So premeditated killing basically, again, involves planning, meaning if I said to you, I'm going to go kill this individual, and then I made actually plans and steps to do that. And in this instance, I don't honestly think he intended on killing him. But the third-degree charge, what it is a third-degree murder charge. Manslaughter is also called a depraved heart murder, which basically depraved heart means you had a gross indifference and negligence to a person's life, which is true. The man kept saying, I can't breathe, please get off of me. And the cop just did not care. He wouldn't let up. So that is where the charge of manslaughter and third-degree murder is sustained right there, because he obviously had a gross indifference to this man's life. But he did not set out at the start of his day, I'm going to find this guy and I'm going to kill him. Now, the thing about that is something that I like that the prosecutor said, which is true in all cases. If evidence comes out and they're still investigating that would support upgrade of charges to first-degree murder, the charges can and will be upgraded. But there's no sense in them seeking a first-degree murder conviction if it can't be sustained, and then because they were hastily brought against the individual isn't convicted, and then we have a whole other situation. So that's why I'm confident in this case there will be a conviction, because based on everything that has come out thus far, that burden on the state should be clearly proven just by the videotape alone.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought these points out. Now I'm going to piggyback and follow up with what you said, that the further charges should come. First of all, so there's a difference between intent and hope. All the way, this police officer, he hoped that that black man died. Now, how do I know that? Because we have the video. The thing is that we don't have the audio just yet. First of all, the police officers, their cameras are working. They're supposed to have audio, okay? But so far, we're not getting the audio. So it wasn't for the citizens who were standing by, who are actually doing video with their cell phones, we wouldn't have gotten anything. Because at the very beginning, all you see is that you see one officer where he has his knee on his back. Then another video came out by another person, a bystander, who says, no, wait a minute, I was videoing from this angle, and you can see he had his knee on his back, and he had his knee on his throat. And the key part where I say the hope, he hoped for this guy to die, is because the fact is that he was putting so much pressure on him to cause him to suffer for no reason. And this is what these guys do when they're cops. Like I said, in having, the experience in law enforcement and working with actual police, okay, never arrested anyone, because never had any arrest powers, but you have detaining powers. So at that moment, the man was detained. So the police is supposed to stop, just like anybody else. That's the point. That's why the charge should go higher, just from seeing what you saw. So then that means that I understand that the prosecutor wanted to get something going and all this stuff, which in my opinion, because I've worked further in law enforcement compared to others, that's nonsense. And I'm going to say why it's nonsense. When you have video, and video is you can use that. At one time, they wouldn't allow this and wouldn't allow that in the court as evidence. But now, okay, so video is right away gives you up. It is what it is, So you can see that the officer has his knee directly in the middle of his back, okay? He had handcuffs on. He's on his belly. He's not handcuffed on his back. He's not handcuffed on his side. He's handcuffed on his belly. That means there's nowhere this guy can go. And then on top of that, when you look at the video from the whole beginning, the first thing that he said was, and this is without audio, the handcuffs are too tight. You can see his mouth moving, and you can see his face expression the moment they put them handcuffs on him. Now, I know about that, because I've been put in handcuffs.
Me and you both.
Exactly. So just because you are the good guy, and just because you're on the side of law enforcement, don't mean that the handcuffs won't be put on you. That's why people are so outraged, because this makes no sense. There's just no excuse for what these 4 police officers done. Not just him, but all 4 of them, because it wasn't a one-on-one. It was an assist arrest. And so once they put the cuffs on, he was already detained. And they purposely put the handcuffs on him too tight. So he was suffering from the very beginning. And that's what he kept saying. If you could read lips, and whoever is a good lawyer who's going to get involved, they have one of the best civil rights lawyers, Benjamin Crump. He's involved in this case. He's involved in these other cases with innocent black people just murdered by these cops. So, as far as the law part, you're right. The law part, you have to go up against all these things that set up to kill black people. That's what this is. That's really what this is all about. But I'm just going to finish commenting on your point. So if you already caused the man to suffer, you're not supposed to cause someone to suffer. When they detain, that's it. But then next you know, they get away on the other side of the street where now nobody can really see what's going on. And that's what these officers do. So it's 4 of them. Now we come to find out it's not just an assist, meaning you only need one person to assist you. You know, you got 3 guys assisting you. The guy's already handcuffed. What can he be doing when you got 4 guys on one guy? And then next you know, he's on the ground. So then they show on the other detail on someone else's video that he had the assist. He was the lead guy on top, closer, you know, to where his brain is, his main function in his heart. And the other officer was at the lower part of his body. Then there was the 3rd officer who was also assisted. So you got 3 people that's already got this guy down. He's on his belly. That's it. He's done. Why then was this officer pressing on his throat and constantly staying on him like that? Why he started to be in more pain. He's already complaining about the handcuffs. Now he's saying my stomach hurts. Now he's saying I can't breathe. Please. This guy, he has his hand in his pocket. That's a tactic. That's a sneaky tactic. And I'm going to tell you that has nothing to do with military training at all. Nothing. This is just a stuff that you learn from the street. Just like when you're a street fighter, you do all kind of things, anything to win. That's what it's all about when you fight in the street. I come from the streets, so the battle in the street, you throw all that stuff, laws and this and that, tactics and defense moves and everything else, martial arts, whatever. You throw it out the window and you use what works in the street. So he had his hand in his pocket, Jerry. This is why I'm saying he hoped that black man died. Because when he slid his hand in his pocket, he figured that he was being slick. He was as if you're right on camera, and yet if you put your hand in your pocket, you can't see what I'm really doing. So what he was doing, he was using more pressure on that daggone knee to even push it down more. That's what he was doing. That's why he was so comfortable and able to steady himself. So he had one knee up, one knee on his back, you know, with his hand pressure, and you could see in the tape he was pushing and forcing on purpose. He was intending to keep forcing down, and that's what that hand was in his pocket. That's not no tactic. That wasn't a tactic. He think, you know, most people wouldn't see that because, you know, that stuff you do in front of, when you work with kids, you have all kind of rules, and you know that certain things you're not supposed to do, even though while you're handling these kids. But a lot of times, adults, they take advantage of the situation. They are abusive. They're sneaky. They slide the hand around this way where it looks like they might be trying to contain the person, but they're crushing them. They're grabbing them harder. They're squeezing them. They're doing everything they can. And if you can't see it, they're shielding that themselves, then that's what they get away with. But this is right on camera. So in my mind, he definitely should get the 2nd-degree charge because he hoped that the guy died, and that's exactly what the guy did. Last thing I'm going to say about that, he was already out, and he still kept his knee on his throat, even when he wasn't moving. So, you know, I just wanted to make that point to what you were saying, Jerry.
Well, yeah, well, I know, like, I've had scenarios involving the Philadelphia Sheriff's Office where, like you said, again, they'll put the cuffs on you as tight as possible. Now, in my instance and circumstance, I told the cop, I told the sheriff's officer, I am diabetic. Now, I don't know if you know this about diabetics, but we already have circulatory issues with circulation. And I told them more than once, I am diabetic. Could you please loosen the cuffs? Now, if you see me, I am not a menacing person at all. You don't have to worry about me trying to do anything. There's no sense in trying to put the cuffs as tight as possible. You know what the sheriff told me? I don't, and I'm going to say this, and I apologize. We usually keep it family, but this is real. The sheriff told me, I don't give a fuck. That's what he told me. Quote, when I told this man twice that I was diabetic and to please not put the cuffs on. And that's the indifference that they train these cops not to have any respect for human life, and especially black males. They train them not to care, like we're damn animals. And it's a shame.
Right. Well, that's why I'm going to bring that back to the sorority and the fraternity. Most of the time when you have a guy that does something like that, they're talking amongst themselves. When they get together, when they socialize, this is what they're going to do. They've already been told through proper training. That's why you hear on television, you hear the professionals who retired, and they're trying to be careful, whatever, because they don't want to be sued. That's another thing. It's like you have to be careful. Even when you tell the truth, someone will try to take advantage of that. But regardless, if you speak on the things of how actual training go, each step you are trained how to use those tools, and you are told. Here's the number one thing, Jerry. You are not allowed to threaten the liberty of anyone. That's what a police officer is told. So when you go and put handcuffs on someone too tight, you are threatening their liberty. Liberty of what? Liberty of life. You just explained the example right there. If you're a diabetic and you put too much pressure on that person, that can really cause some other serious problems, which cut off their liberty of life. So, and especially when you have them in the handcuffs, there's no reason for you to overdo it or put too much physical, pressure on anyone. The other thing, when you have handcuffs on you, it takes less than 3 seconds for you to become uncomfortable. Less than 3 seconds. The moment somebody put handcuffs on you, your hands behind your back, you are, if you're a normal human, average person, you're going to be uncomfortable. That's the whole point of designing the handcuffs, so that you can make sure that the person who becomes your prisoner doesn't think about escape, but it's a deterrent to throw that person off, so that they're so busy, realizing how comfortable they are, that they won't think about doing anything else, that they won't resist. That's the whole point. And once you get a person where you have it in their mind they won't resist, then you are safe as long as you have that person in custody and you try to get that person to where they need to be. So when you talk about a person's liberty, and this is the whole point. Police do not have the right to threaten a person's liberty. So, for an example, they was talking about the riots, and right away, most people who are black, I just don't get the issue with black people who are like this. Regardless of all the terrible things they witnessed, they will go into reasoning mode first. The first thing they want to think of is, but they're burning down their own town. They're burning down their own stuff. First of all, this is not even a time for reasoning. So it doesn't belong to them. That's number one. And number two, if you're going to burn something down, you're not supposed to kill somebody because you see somebody start a fire. They don't have the right to do it. If somebody breaks a window, you're not supposed to shoot or kill somebody because they break a window. In fact, the police have a list from 1 to 10. 1 is priority. What is a priority issue or response? So they consider breaking a window, starting a fire. Do you know that is like down with like number 9 or 8? Breaking a window or starting a fire is not even serious when it comes to a serious response for a police officer. So why is it that every time when anything that a black person is accused of doing, this is the whole point, they take it to a level 1? That's the difference that we're talking about in the extreme racism, when you have a white person who may actually have a butcher knife in the hand. He or she lunging at the police, but they first see this is a white person. They value the white person's life. We know our levels from 1 to 10. And where they could take that lunging, which means you might take away my liberty as a police officer, meaning you might take my liberty to live, then you know, I'm going to pull out a weapon and shoot you to keep my liberty going. Most of the time, they still try to de-escalate the situation. Here's somebody coming at you with a butcher knife, and you're still trying to de-escalate. What level this come in? But then you get a phone call that somebody is supposed to have been committed forgery. I thought that they came up to the store. That don't even make any sense. This is why they should get murder number 2. We know, you know, murder in the first degree. I got you. But what led up to this murder, it doesn't make any kind of sense. It's not like, you know, he was trying to do forgery in a store or whatever. I don't even know. No one has even bothered to explain. That's how the cover-up starts already. He was in a car. He was in a car. So if you have no proof just because you are accused of something, the Constitution says you have the right to your liberty and to have a trial by a jury. Not a judge, but by a jury. What do you think about that, Jim?
Well, you know, I mean, and I hate to say it like this, but most of the Constitution is BS to begin with. The Constitution, when it was formed, did not have our liberties in mind. And when I say our liberties, I mean minorities, people of color, you know, whatever thing you want to use. It was the Constitution in the United States, period, is basically built on white supremacy. It's based on the ideal that white people are better than everybody else, which is, you know, completely false. It's just go ahead.
No, that's right. That's right. That's why I wanted to ask you that question, not because I didn't want you to have the answer. I got the answer. It's a legal question. But in case you had a comment, which you did. But now, here's the deep part. The Constitution was written and put together by Madison. This guy, Madison, eventually becomes the president of the United States, just like eventually George Washington becomes the president of the United States. Both Madison and George Washington were racist and white supremacists. So you have all these white supremacists and racist people who put together some laws just for them. And then you have everybody's bragging and talking about the Constitution. Oh man, the Constitution of America, and so forth, so on. But they completely ignore who put this thing together. So when you talk about the Constitution and how this is supposed to go, freedom, liberty, here you have law enforcement. They rarely mention that George Washington was a cop. And so, you know, it just kills me that when they talk about the founding fathers, which they were all fraudulent, except for a few. They were fraudulent from the beginning. You know, they just glorify these frauds. Here, George Washington. So we have the same problem that we're having now. Before America was really America. George Washington was a cop before America became America as we know it today. And he was one of the terrible, racist, mean-spirit killings. He killed, and he got away with it, and it was all normal and all good. So the same tactics and the same views. He had slaves, and this George Washington was so terrible that he would send out people to try to capture. Imagine how many slaves George Washington had, and you have authority, and you're a cop. So you think you can just do whatever you want to do, just as these cops today, they have the same mentality. So if a black person even wants to get away, the way the Constitution is written by these racists and white supremacists, that no black person can get away, ever. And anytime they want to kill you, they can. And this is the law. So they wrote it. They put it together. You know, now we come here today, And you see these same police officers who are like this, and then you have your blacks as well who are, racist against blacks, and they're supremacists too. And all they do is support these guys who are white supremacists and racists, because the bottom line is if they're benefiting from the suffering of all these innocent black people, so what? They don't care. So that's why when you talk to the police, and you're right, Jerry, because you had mentioned even if they black, you got to really be careful. They say they will still stick to and loyal to police officers even when that's not even the point or the topic. Why can't you go out and go all the way back and say, look, your first police officer in America who ended up being the president? That's why Trump is talking the way he is. He's the biggest police officer that we have. And what did he say? Did you hear what he said, Jim?
I try not to listen to him. So go ahead. I really do, because every time I listen to him, it's just ridiculous, and I end up getting pissed off, and then I end up having a whole bad night. So I just try not to even bother.
But I got you. But this is important. Listen, he says when the riot first started, we call it a riot. It wasn't the protesters' fault. These are people out there who are getting in the front, starting trouble, trying to destroy and all kind of stuff, and fight against the government. They don't care anything about the death of George Floyd. Okay? First thing Trump says is when the looting starts, the bullet starts, or the shooting starts. So that was his code word to say, go out and kill anybody if you see them trying to loot. This goes all the way back to a person who was also in political position and power named George Wallace. He was a racist, a white supremacist. He said it way back when. That's all we care about. If you see someone looting, meaning a black person, then kill them. Although I just explained the law early on, we've been on for almost an hour, that is against the law. Any police officer who shoots someone just because you see them loot, the police officer has committed a crime. You're not allowed to just shoot people just because, regardless of what crime you see them commit. You just are not allowed to just shoot and kill someone or choke them to death just because you're the police.
However, I noticed they put little loopholes in the criminal justice system for law enforcement to actually not only allow but to promote officers when they engage in this type of behavior. And the only reason why these officers were charged is because they got caught. Can you imagine how many times this happens on a daily basis in the neighborhoods, in the inner cities, in the projects where they're not caught on camera, where they shake down young black males? They threaten them, intimidate them. I had an incident a couple of years ago. This is about maybe 3 years ago, which I think I told you about. I may have told you about. I lived on the 1300 block of West Pike Street. There's a Dunkin' Donuts right there on Broad and Erie. So this was 4 o'clock in the morning. I decided to go into the Dunkin' Donuts to get my coffee, to get a coffee and a sandwich. Now, mind you, I already ordered. So my food was already ready. So I figured, let me just park here to run in, get the food, and then come out, which I did. In that time, in that less than minute, I come out, there's a police officer ticketing my car. I didn't know that it was a no parking zone, which, if you kind of want to be funny, I'm only 5 feet tall. The sign is 7 feet up in the air, and I even told the officer, I didn't see the sign. So, and this is what you were talking about before, about how some of our own people, do us really dirty. And I'm trying to speak to that officer. I'm like, well, I just ran in there for 3 seconds to get my... So he immediately starts cursing. You shouldn't have effing parked there. Excuse me? Like, what was the need for the expletive? And I'm like, well, could you add, So long story short, me and him end up going back and forth. This cop follows me back to my house. This is a lieutenant, by the way. A lieutenant up in, I think it's the 39th district, which is where I was living. Well, if anybody knows about the history of Philadelphia police, we know about the 39th district anyway. And this man followed me to my house. Fortunately, I stopped before I got to my house because I did not want this man to know where I lived at. And he proceeded to threaten me, like literally threaten physical violence. I contacted the district, contacted the internal affairs. Of course, they did nothing. And this is the type of behavior that these cops exhibit. And then they wonder, I'm not condoning or anything, but they wonder when things happen to cops, why things happen. They need to have more respect for the citizens of the areas that they police.
Right. Well, you don't have to say you're not condoning what happens to cops. See, that's the point. Based on what's happening right now, this is history. The last time that the National Guard had to be called out, we're going way back before the 60s. So right now, history is in the making again in 2020, where there was riots. The people were tired and sick of being abused and killed and murdered. And so they protested. But they always use the word riot. And you notice they try to make it interchangeable, but it's not. You are a protester, you have the right to speak your mind and everything. But see, when it comes to police, once they get that position, they feel you better not open up your mouth, you better not do anything. I can say whatever I want to you, you better not do anything, because if you do, then I'm going to do you bodily harm. Now, in the case if it's a white person who run a stop sign, and the police follow them, and they pull in the parking lot to the Wawa, if that Wawa has a parking lot, the police officer will explain to the white person why he pulled them over. And then if the white person says, well, look, okay, give me a ticket. But what you're not going to do is you're not going to lecture me. I'm getting out and I'm going in the Wawa. Can you imagine a black person telling the cop that? Now, I'm telling you this because this is actually true how this happens all the time. Okay? So the examples that I give you are real life examples and how white privilege happens because the white cop knows what they're not supposed to do. That's the point that I wanted to bring out in the beginning of this whole show. When you deal with police, you have to be careful because they know what they're not supposed to do. So to tell them what they're not supposed to do, and they want to do what's wrong anyway, only sets it up so they can do more harm and lie on you.
And I'm actually glad you said that because that is another point that I was going to make. You know, that these police out here are killers. And it's messed up that we even have to be like this. But I try to emphasize to people that if you have an encounter with the police, the main thing you need to be worrying about is surviving that encounter. It's not really in your best interest to mouth off. It's not in your best interest to try to, tell them what your civil rights are. They know what your civil rights are. They don't care. Right. So you need to, if you get stopped by the cops, you need to be in survival mode. There's a saying that says, you can challenge the validity of an arrest in court, but you can't challenge it if you're dead. So, right. And even me, I had to learn because I have a temper on me. Just like I told you that incident with the cop.
Right.
Unfortunately, me and him got into a verbal altercation to the point where he threatened me. He, quote, said, I will F you up. You 31st punch MFer. That's literally what he said to me. And I'm like, really? You think I'm that stupid to hit you so you can pull out a gun and shoot me? And, I just hope that we learn from this and that, like I said, it's unfortunate that we got to be this way. When I've seen white people, I had seen a video where, we talked about this before, but a white lady actually cursed the cops out. Cursed them out. And they were just like, have a good day.
Right.
And exactly. It's like, surviving that encounter. If you as a black individual, especially a black male, start mouthing off, you automatically escalated that, and you are going to, because they're already looking to check you out anyway, and you just gave them an excuse to do it.
Right. And it's not just black males, it's black females too, because they don't care. They'll kill a black woman just like kill
Oh yeah, I know.
black men. Now, because our time is limited, and it's 3:56, the conversation got good. I just wanted to bring out in the next 4 minutes something really important. This is not new news, but just in case you did not know this, and sharing this with you, Jerry, you might know it, but you might not know it. So here's what's happening with the protests and why things are burning and why things are getting blown up, and they're doing all kind of stuff, so that they're going to call out the National Guard and ask more troops to come to build it up and parts of the military to help out. The white supremacists are the ones who are taking the lead and taking over the protests. That's very, very significant. And I'm really shocked that on these two television stations who are doing the news, MSNBC and CNN, I believe they're the only two. That's why I trust the Newsday report. They are willing to say that. So right now, the rest of the country, you know what they're angry at? Black people. They see all the fires, they see all this stuff going on, and they think, see, this is what black people are doing.
Well, they've actually to my understanding, they're actually bussing in white supremacists to cause commotion with the crowd to try to further the Republican agenda.
Right. That's the whole point. So what they're doing is they're in the crowd, and then they're starting all the violence, and you see the white people in the front. You see them. And then when they start the fire or they blow something up or whatever, they go back behind the crowd. They go back behind the crowd, hoping for a reaction so that some police officer will overreact or whatever and start shooting. As I said to you, here are the laws and the rules. Even if you see somebody start a fire or throw a rock, a police officer does not have the right to shoot anyone for doing that. That is not a crime to the level that you will be able to use deadly force. So the white supremacists, which is crazy, they're walking with the people that they hate. They hate black people, but they're able to walk safely with black people, which exposes the fact black people, we have never been a threat in America. Never. If that was the case, how could these white people be walking down the street to protest? So we already know that you have some good white people who are out there as well, okay? And no white people are getting attacked. If you go back on that one time when Rodney King was attacked by those police, and then the riots happened, the one white person, he got hit really bad, and he almost got killed by a black guy. That guy, and out of all that whole protest, can you imagine? You see how bad this is and why this protest should happen? Out of all them people, do you know they quit that guy who attacked the white guy and really bruised him badly? Okay, they quit him. But if you have a black person who gets murdered, whatever, they don't know how to find the person. They don't have any, they leave it to the communities to do it. So I just wanted to bring that part out because I know it's like we got 1 more minute. It's 3:59. It's probably 4 o'clock in the next few seconds. Please stick with us, Philly Funk Radio, and also Flyod WBSR. We're going to try to come back and keep you abreast the way we can, and hopefully we'll get some questions and we can answer those questions. But stay safe. There's a curfew in every situation with a protest means if you're not supposed to be out there after 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it is, please just go back. Wait till the next day for the curfew.
Well, we haven't officially instituted a curfew. However, it's the good idea to do that. Right. It's better to, what do you call it? Self-preservation.
Yes,
well, self-regulation. To do it yourself before they do it for you.
Right.
So, okay. Right. Well, this has been an interesting hour. We actually didn't get to a couple of things, which is good. There's still some things left on the table for the next time, and we will discuss this in the near future because now there's, this is far from over. What's going on right now is far, far, far from over. It's actually just beginning. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today, Van, and we're about to go. Thank you out there. I wanted to give a shout out. I wanted to give some shout outs out there to Bill in Upper Darby, who's watching us. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Mark, who's checking us out on our Facebook and YouTube pages. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe. And if you're in a hot area, put them air conditioners in the window, because that's what I'm about to do tomorrow. All right, then. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.